People like you don't close billion-dollar deals, Chloe Whitmore said loudly enough for half the ballroom to hear. You pour champagne at them. The laughter came fast, soft at first, then wider as heads turned beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Mercer Hotel. A string quartet was playing near the marble staircase. Waiters in white gloves moved between towers of champagne. The skyline of downtown Chicago glowed through 40-foot windows. And right in the center of all that polished money, Chloe Whitmore stood with one hand on her hip and the other wrapped around a crystal flute, smiling like she had just given the room something clever to remember. Vanessa Cole did not move. She stood in a black silk gown with a silver clasp at her shoulder, one hand resting lightly against the leather portfolio she carried, her expression calm enough to make the moment feel even louder. Chloe had planted herself directly in front of the private signing lounge, blocking the entrance with the confidence of someone who had never once been told no and believed tonight would be no different. Around them, conversations slowed, then stopped. Several guests pretended not to stare, which only made their staring more obvious. A woman near the bar lowered her martini. A man from a venture capital firm turned halfway in his seat. Two phones rose almost in sync, screens glowing in the low gold light. Chloe noticed and seemed to enjoy it. Her smile sharpened. I'm serious, she said, looking Vanessa up and down with that polished kind of cruelty rich people mistake for wit. The signing lounge is for principals, not plus ones who wandered away from the service hallway. A few people shifted uncomfortably, but no one stepped in. That was the way rooms like this worked. Truth mattered less than confidence. Power mattered less than performance. And Chloe Whitmore had been performing power her whole life. Vanessa's eyes did not leave her face. She did not rush to defend herself. She did not reach for her invitation. She did not explain who she was to people who had already decided what she could not be. The silence around her felt deliberate, measured, almost surgical. That silence bothered Chloe more than any argument could have. Did you not hear me? Chloe asked, louder now, drawing even more attention from the investors, board members, and executives gathered for the biggest merger dinner of the quarter. This room is reserved for Whitmore Global and the people important enough to sit across from them. The deal screen glowed behind her in clean white letters. Whitmore Global Holdings X Cole Horizon Capital. Vanessa glanced past Chloe for half a second, just long enough to read the display, then looked back at the younger woman as if confirming a detail she already knew. Chloe mistook the glance for insecurity and leaned in with a bright, merciless smile. You should save yourself the embarrassment and leave before security helps you find the door. More phones lifted. A low whisper moved through the room like a current. Vanessa finally spoke, and her voice was so calm that people near the back leaned in to catch it. Whitmore Global still expects Cole Horizon to sign tonight? Chloe laughed instantly, too quickly, too confidently. My father owns this room. Vanessa's gaze settled on her without blinking. No, she said softly. He just hasn't realized yet whose room he walked into. The words landed harder than a shout because Vanessa did not raise her voice to say them. For one suspended second, the ballroom forgot how to breathe. Chloe Whitmore still wore that amused smile, but it no longer fit her face the way it had a moment ago. It sat there too long, too sharp, like something borrowed from a scene that had already changed. Around them, glasses paused halfway to lips. A server near the lounge doors stopped with a silver tray balanced perfectly still in both hands. The quartet continued playing, but even the music felt thinner now, reduced to background noise beneath the pressure building in the room. Chloe recovered first, or tried to. She gave a quick laugh and tossed her hair over one shoulder, making a show of how little Vanessa's comment affected her. That is actually adorable, she said, glancing around for approval. Do you hear this? She thinks one dramatic sentence makes her important. A few people gave uncertain smiles, but the energy had shifted. The audience Chloe had been controlling a minute ago was no longer fully hers. Too many eyes had moved to Vanessa. Too many people were replaying the glowing deal screen behind them and the exact way Vanessa had asked that question. Chloe saw it happening and pushed harder. Let me make this simple, she said, stepping half an inch closer, still blocking the entrance to the signing lounge. Whitmore Global is closing the most talked about private equity deal in this city tonight. The room behind me is for decision makers, founders, and people whose names move markets. Not for someone who walked in hoping confidence could pass for clearance. Vanessa let the insult hang there untouched. Her posture did not change. Her expression did not tighten. She looked past Chloe again, this time toward the long glass wall where the city lights reflected over the ballroom like scattered gold. Then she returned her attention to Chloe as if the younger woman were merely one detail in a larger equation. That calm was beginning to work on people. Not because it was loud, because it was stronger than loud. An event manager in a navy tuxedo approached with the nervous smile of a man who had already guessed he was walking into the wrong moment. His name badge read Martin Ellis. He looked first at Chloe, then at Vanessa, then toward the phones still raised around them. "Good evening," he said carefully. "Is there some issue with access to the lounge?" Chloe answered before anyone else could. "Yes, this woman is trying to get in without authorization, and she is turning a private event into a scene." Martin turned to Vanessa with the polite caution reserved for guests who might become problems. "Ma'am, do you have your invitation?" Vanessa handed it over without a word. The paper was thick creamstock with a black embossed seal. Martin read the name once, then again. Something small changed in his face. It was not recognition exactly, more like the first crack in certainty. "This invitation is valid," he said quietly. "You are cleared for the signing lounge." Chloe let out a sharp laugh. "Of course she is not. Check the principal list." Martin hesitated, and that hesitation told the whole room everything it needed to know. He was no longer deciding what was true. He was deciding what was safe. He pulled a tablet from under his arm and scanned the event manifest while Chloe folded her arms, radiating the easy arrogance of inherited power. Across the ballroom, two men in tailored suits stopped their conversation completely. A woman from a financial news outlet lowered her phone from her ear and started watching openly. Martin swallowed. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, forcing a diplomatic tone. "Perhaps we can resolve this quietly." Vanessa took back her invitation. "Quietly is what your staff was aiming for when they let her decide who belonged here." Martin's face tightened. Chloe turned, triumphant for half a second, thinking that meant Vanessa was finally losing composure. But Vanessa's eyes were still steady, still unreadable, and when Martin glanced at the screen in his hand one more time, the color began to drain from his face. He had just found the name he should have checked first. Martin Ellis stared at the tablet as if the letters on the screen had rearranged themselves into a language he no longer trusted. His thumb hovered over the principal access list, then moved back, then stopped again. The ballroom lights reflected off the glass in his hand, but not enough to hide what everyone nearest to him could already see. He had found something he did not expect to find. Chloe Whitmore saw the change in his face and mistook it for weakness. "Do not tell me this is difficult," she said, her voice slicing through the silence with renewed confidence. "My family funded half the redevelopment project this hotel keeps bragging about. If someone wandered into the wrong room, remove her and move on." The words were sharp, practiced, and loud enough to pull even more attention from the bar, the investor tables, and the line of guests near the auction display. Every second this continued, more phones appeared. No one bothered to hide it now. This was no longer a private embarrassment. It was becoming an event. Vanessa stood exactly where she had been, one hand still resting against the portfolio at her side, calm in a way that made everyone around her feel their own nerves more clearly. She did not rush Martin. She did not rescue him. She let him sit inside the truth he had finally reached. Chloe noticed that too, and it irritated her. "Well?" she demanded. "Say it. She is not supposed to be here." Martin lifted his eyes from the tablet and looked at Vanessa with the kind of caution people only use when they realize they may have been speaking to the wrong person in the wrong tone. "Ms. Cole," he said carefully, "there appears to have been a misunderstanding at the entrance." Chloe let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "No, there appears to be a staff problem." She stepped to Martin's side and tried to angle the screen toward herself, but he pulled it back just enough to keep it out of reach without making the movement obvious. That tiny motion said more than words could have. A murmur moved through the crowd. It was quiet, but it carried. Chloe heard it. So did Vanessa. Across the room, a senior partner from an insurance group lowered his glass and whispered something into his wife's ear. The woman from the financial outlet was no longer pretending to simply observe. She was recording steadily now, the ballroom glow reflected in her phone lens. Chloe's smile thinned. "I am giving you one chance to do your job," she said to Martin, each word polished to look reasonable while sounding like a threat. "My father is 10 minutes away from final signature. He does not need distractions, and he definitely does not need some stranger trying to impress people by pretending she belongs in a room she could never afford to enter." Vanessa's expression did not change, but something colder moved through her eyes. Not anger, confirmation. Chloe was still talking because Chloe still thought the room belonged to volume. Vanessa finally answered, and the softness of her voice forced everyone closer to silence. "Interesting," she said. "So your father is the final signature?" Chloe lifted her chin. "That is how major deals work." Vanessa nodded once, as if filing the answer where it belonged. "No," she said. "That is how people talk when they have never actually held the pen." Martin shut off the tablet screen so fast it almost looked like a reflex. His throat moved. He was sweating now, though the ballroom was cool. Chloe turned to him, then back to Vanessa, and for the first time that night her confidence did not look effortless. It looked rehearsed. "You really think one mysterious sentence is supposed to scare me?" she asked, but her voice came out a shade tighter than before. Vanessa's gaze moved briefly to the glowing deal display behind the lounge doors, then to the gold clock above the far bar. "No," she said, "but the email your father is about to receive probably will." Chloe Whitmore stared at Vanessa for a beat too long, then forced a laugh that sounded brighter than it should have. It bounced across the ballroom and died almost instantly. People heard it for what it was now, not confidence but effort. The kind of effort people make when they feel control slipping and try to hold onto it with volume. "You are unbelievable," Chloe said, folding her arms as if that could put the room back in place. "Do you know what my father would do if he heard some random guest threatening his company at his own signing dinner?" Vanessa did not answer. She did not need to. Martin Ellis had already stepped half a pace back from Chloe and half a pace toward Vanessa, and in rooms like this, tiny movements were as loud as alarms. The quartet played on near the staircase, but even the violin seemed cautious now. Near the center bar, conversations had dissolved into whispers. Guests who had spent the evening pretending this was just another elegant corporate celebration were beginning to understand they were watching something much better. Not a signing, a reversal. Chloe felt the shift and turned sharply toward Martin. "Get security," she said. "Now." Martin hesitated for only a second before signaling to 2 hotel security officers stationed near the auction display. They approached with careful steps and careful faces, the kind of expression people wear when they know they are being watched by money from every direction. One of them, an older man with silver at his temples, stopped beside Martin and quietly asked, "What seems to be the issue?" Chloe answered first, of course. "The issue is that this woman is interfering with a private executive event and refusing to leave the restricted area." The security officer looked to Martin for confirmation. Martin swallowed. "Her credentials are valid," he said, too softly. "She is on the principal access list." Chloe turned so fast the crystal in her hand caught the light like a blade. "Then your list is wrong." Several people nearby exchanged looks at that. Not because the line was shocking, because it was revealing. Chloe still believed systems existed to be corrected whenever they contradicted her. Vanessa watched her with the same unreadable calm, letting the younger woman expose herself one layer at a time. The second security officer shifted his weight and glanced at Vanessa's invitation, then at Martin, then back toward the glowing deal display behind the lounge doors. He could see the name on the screen. He could see the name on the card. And now he could feel the room pulling away from Chloe, inch by inch. "Ma'am," he said to Vanessa, "if there has been a misunderstanding, Perhaps we can escort you to a quieter area while this is sorted out. Chloe relaxed immediately, hearing what she wanted in his tone. There it was. The old habit of institutions asking the correct person to move because the wrong person was powerful. Vanessa's eyes settled on him, not unkind, but direct enough to make him wish he had phrased it differently. A quieter area, she repeated. So the guest with valid access leaves, and the woman blocking the signing lounge stays? No one missed the question, least of all the people filming. The security officer opened his mouth, then closed it again. Chloe stepped in before silence could work against her. Do not make this dramatic, she said, smiling at the crowd now as if she were rescuing everyone from inconvenience. Tonight is about business. Serious business. My father and his team are finalizing a 9-figure agreement, and frankly, none of us have time for someone trying to turn herself into the story. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. That would depend, she said, on who the story is really about. At that exact moment, the private lounge doors opened and Richard Whitmore entered with Diane Whitmore at his side, both polished, composed, and smiling the smile of people expecting applause. Richard took one look at the crowd, the raised phones, the security officers, his daughter standing rigid in front of the deal screen, and Vanessa Cole standing calm at the center of it all. His smile did not disappear. It stalled. Diane's eyes moved from Chloe to Vanessa to the principal access tablet still held close against Martin's chest. Richard's phone buzzed in his hand, then buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and the blood left his face so quickly that even Diane noticed before he said a word. Richard Whitmore did not speak right away. That was the first thing everyone noticed. A man who had built his reputation on fast answers and smooth control stood in the center of his own signing dinner staring at his phone like it had just rewritten the future in his hand. The ballroom seemed to sense it before the words arrived. The phones lifted higher. The whispers thinned into silence. Even Chloe, who had been talking without breathing for the last several minutes, turned toward her father with a smile that expected rescue and found something else entirely. His jaw had locked. His eyes moved once across the screen, then again, slower, as if hoping the message would change if he gave it another chance. Diane Whitmore stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound elegant while still sharp with urgency. Richard, she said. What is it? He did not answer her either. That silence was louder than any outburst could have been. Vanessa Cole watched him without triumph, without heat, without even the faint satisfaction Chloe had spent the entire evening trying to provoke. She simply stood there, composed and still, while Richard Whitmore finally lifted his head and looked directly at her. Recognition arrived in pieces. First confusion, then calculation, then the awful snap of understanding. Vanessa Cole, he said, the name leaving his mouth carefully now, stripped of the arrogance his daughter had been borrowing all night. Chloe blinked. Wait, she said, looking from her father to Vanessa and back again. You know her? No one answered. Richard was still staring at Vanessa, and the answer was already in his face. Martin Ellis lowered his eyes at once, like a man who had just realized he had almost escorted the wrong person out of the most expensive room in the hotel. Diane's posture changed next. It was subtle, but everyone close enough to see it understood. Her shoulders tightened. Her smile disappeared. She had walked in expecting a celebration and found the edge of a cliff instead. Chloe laughed once, too quickly, too brightly. Okay, what is this? She asked. Dad. Seriously, why are you acting like this? Richard exhaled through his nose and turned the phone in his hand just enough for Diane to see the subject line. Her face lost color in a single second. Legal notice. Deal suspension. Cole Horizon Capital. Chloe was still waiting for someone to tell her this was minor, temporary, fixable. No one did. Vanessa's voice, when it came, was quiet enough to make the room lean toward her again. You asked earlier who the story was really about, she said. Now you know. Richard took one step forward. Not aggressive, not grand, just stunned into motion. Ms. Cole, he said, choosing each word as, though the wrong one might finish the damage already starting around him. Perhaps we should speak privately. Chloe looked at him as if she had been slapped by the sentence itself. Privately. Not because he wanted discretion. Because he had finally understood there was no winning this publicly. Vanessa did not move. That would be difficult, she said. Your daughter has spent the last 10 minutes making sure this was never private. Around them, the room stayed perfectly still. The security officers had backed away without being told. The quartet had stopped playing altogether. And somewhere near the bar, a phone buzzed with a breaking market alert, just as Chloe finally whispered the one question she should have asked at the beginning. Dad, she said, her voice small for the first time all night. What deal did we just lose? Richard Whitmore did not answer right away, and that silence told Chloe more than any explanation could have. Her eyes moved from his face to Diane's, then back to Vanessa, searching for the weak point in the room and finding none. The confidence she had worn like jewelry all night was starting to slip, but pride made her hold on to the pieces. This is absurd, she said, forcing a laugh that sounded thin against the hush spreading across the ballroom. Dad, tell her whatever this is can be fixed. Richard finally looked at his daughter, and the look in his eyes was not anger yet. It was disbelief that she had managed to set fire to something this large without even understanding what she touched. He turned back to Vanessa. Cole Horizon was prepared to finalize the acquisition tonight, he said, his voice measured now, stripped of every ounce of his earlier certainty. There is no reason to make a decision in the middle of a misunderstanding. Vanessa held his gaze. A misunderstanding is when facts are unclear, she said. Tonight, your daughter made them very clear. Around them, the air felt different, heavier, almost electrical. Guests who had arrived expecting speeches and signatures were now watching a family learn the price of public contempt in real time. Near the bar, a hedge fund manager lowered his phone and checked his inbox, then raised his brows at whatever had just landed there. On the far side of the room, the woman from the financial outlet took one careful step. Closer. Martin Ellis remained frozen with the access tablet against his chest, as if moving too quickly might make him part of the evidence. Chloe folded her arms tighter. You cannot be serious, she said, looking at Vanessa with open disbelief. You are throwing away a 9-figure deal because I called you out at a party? Vanessa's expression did not change. No, she said. I am refusing to sign a 9-figure deal because your family just demonstrated on camera how you treat people when you think power protects you. That landed harder than anything else she had said all night. Not because it was louder, because it was clean, because everyone in the room knew it was true. Diane stepped in then, her voice smooth, elegant, and carefully controlled. Ms. Cole, surely there is room for grace. Chloe can be impulsive, but she is young. We would be happy to clear this up, offer a proper apology, and move forward in a way that benefits everyone. Vanessa turned to her. An apology offered after the contract is at risk is not grace, she said. It is math. A murmur passed through the room. Richard's phone buzzed again. Then Diane's. Then Chloe's. This time Chloe looked down. Her screen lit up with message after message from friends, assistants, and one board liaison asking a single question in all caps. What did you do? Her face changed as she read it. Not fully. Not all at once. But enough. The first crack had finally reached the surface. Richard exhaled slowly, then squared his shoulders as if he could still negotiate his way out of a collapse already in motion. What exactly are you saying? He asked. Vanessa shifted the portfolio in her hand and spoke with the same calm that had undone them from the start. I am saying the deal is suspended pending a full reputational risk review. I am saying my legal team sent that notice 8 minutes ago. And I am saying the board at Cole Horizon will spend the next 24 hours reviewing every clip recorded in this room before deciding whether Whitmore Global deserves to come back to the table at all. No one moved. No one interrupted. Chloe stared at Vanessa as if she were seeing her for the first time, not as a stranger in a black gown, but as the woman holding the door to everything her family had come there to win. Then Chloe swallowed hard and asked the one question she had been too arrogant to ask sooner. Who exactly are you to make that call? Vanessa looked at her, steady and unreadable. And for the first time that night the answer came without softness at all. "I am the chief executive officer of Cole Horizon Capital," she said. "I am the final signature your family spent 6 months chasing. And after what happened here tonight, I am the reason that pen is no longer yours." The silence after Vanessa's words did not feel empty. It felt expensive. It hung beneath the chandeliers and over the marble floor like something every person in that ballroom could now feel pressing against their chest. Chloe Whitmore stood frozen with her phone in one hand and her expression caught between outrage and disbelief, as if reality had moved without asking her permission. A minute ago she had owned the room through noise. Now the room belonged to Vanessa's calm. Richard Whitmore looked older than he had when he walked in. Not by years, but by damage. His tailored tuxedo was still perfect. His silver cuff links still caught the light. But his posture had changed in the one way money could never fully hide. He no longer looked like the man about to close the biggest agreement of the quarter. He looked like a man trying to calculate how much had just fallen apart while witnesses recorded every second. Diane Whitmore lifted her chin and tried to recover first. "This has gone far enough," she said, her voice smooth but strained beneath the polish. "Whatever point has been made, there is no need to turn a family mistake into a corporate spectacle." Vanessa turned toward her, unhurried, composed, the portfolio still resting lightly in one hand as if none of this required more effort than holding a menu. "Your daughter turned it into a spectacle," she said. "I just decided not to sign through it." That line moved through the room like a current. A few guests looked down immediately, not out of shame for Vanessa, but out of discomfort for the Whitmores. Others kept watching openly now. The pretense was gone. This was no longer impolite to witness. It was impossible not to. Near the back wall, a venture attorney tapped his phone twice, and quietly stepped away from the Whitmore table. At the center bar, 2 investors who had arrived planning to congratulate Richard were now whispering to each other with the cold interest people reserved for falling stock. Chloe's phone buzzed again, then continuously. She looked down and read 3 messages in less than 5 seconds. One from a friend with a clip attached. One from an assistant asking whether the video online was real. One from a junior executive at Whitmore Global saying the board liaison was demanding an immediate explanation. Her mouth parted, but no words came out. For the first time that night, she seemed to understand that the room was not just watching. The world outside it had already started. Richard tried one more time. "Vanessa," he said, and the use of her first name sounded less familiar than desperate. A 6-month process should not collapse because of one reckless moment. Vanessa's eyes held his without any heat at all. "It did not collapse because of one moment," she said. "It collapsed because one moment revealed the culture behind the deal." That was the sentence that finished the turn. You could feel it. The crowd did too. There was no easy answer to it. No polished comeback. No public relations spin that could clean it before morning. Martin Ellis took another step back, distancing himself from the Whitmores without announcing it. The 2 security officers had fully lowered their hands and shifted their attention away from Vanessa as if embarrassed they had ever been pointed in her direction. Diane saw that and knew what it meant. Authority was moving, quietly but completely. Chloe finally found her voice again, though it sounded smaller now, thinner, stripped of its earlier shine. "So that is it?" she asked, staring at Vanessa. "You humiliate my family and walk out feeling righteous?" Vanessa looked at her for a long second. "No," she said softly. "Your family humiliated itself. I just refused to reward it." Richard's phone rang then, sharp and sudden in the silence. He glanced at the screen. Board chair. Everyone close enough to see it understood at once why he did not want to answer in front of the room. But he also knew not answering would be worse. He lifted the phone slowly to his ear. "Yes," he said, trying to sound steady. He listened for 3 seconds, then 5, and whatever he heard next drained the last of the color from his face. Chloe took 1 step toward him. "Dad," she whispered. He lowered the phone just enough to look at her, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet enough that people leaned in to catch it. They are calling an emergency vote. Richard Whitmore kept the phone at his ear a moment longer, listening in complete silence while the ballroom listened to him. Whatever the board chair was saying, it was not gentle. His face had gone past anger now, past embarrassment, into that colder place where powerful people finally understand they are no longer in control of the story. When he lowered the phone, he did not look at Vanessa first. He looked at the floor, at the reflection of the chandeliers scattered across the polished marble, as if the answer might be somewhere down there where no camera could reach it. Chloe saw that and panicked. Not inwardly, publicly, the way people do when they have spent their entire lives being rescued and suddenly realize no one is moving. This is insane, she snapped, turning toward the crowd like volume could still recruit it back to her side. You are all standing here watching one woman destroy a legitimate business deal because she is offended by a comment at a party. The line came out hard, but it landed wrong. Too late, too thin, too revealing. A few people actually recoiled from it. Not because it was shocking, but because it was stupid. She still did not understand what had happened. Vanessa did not interrupt her. She let Chloe keep talking, keep widening the crater with every sentence. You want to know what this is? Chloe continued, her voice rising as she pointed one manicured finger toward Vanessa. This is ego. This is someone weaponizing status because she got her feelings hurt in front of a room full of people. Diane Whitmore closed her eyes for half a second, and that tiny gesture said more than any plea could have. She knew Chloe was making it worse. Richard knew it too. But neither of them could stop her before the damage finished turning from crisis into evidence. Vanessa's expression remained almost impossibly calm. Not blank, not cold, controlled. The kind of control that made Chloe's unraveling look even louder. Status, Vanessa repeated softly. Interesting word. Chloe gave a bitter laugh. Please, do not act above it now. You have been waiting for this moment all night. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. No, she said. You created this moment all by yourself. I just declined to protect you from it. The room held still again. Even Chloe seemed to feel the weight of that one. Near the bar, the financial reporter lowered her phone just long enough to send something quickly, then raised it again. Two men from a private lending group stepped several feet away from the Whitmore table, not dramatically, just enough to avoid being visually attached to the family in whatever clip was already spreading online. Martin Ellis received a message on his own device and glanced at it. His eyes widened. He swallowed. Then, very quietly, he turned the screen toward Vanessa instead of toward the Whitmores. Richard noticed and stiffened. Vanessa glanced down for only a second. It was enough. A short internal alert from the hotel communications team. The first headline was already up on a business blog. Video from Whitmore signing dinner raises questions about culture, leadership, and collapsing Coal Horizon deal. Chloe saw Martin angle the screen and stepped forward. What is that? She demanded. Martin did not answer. He did not have to. Richard's phone buzzed again, followed immediately by Diane's. Then Chloe's. This time it was not friends or assistants. It was a flood. Comment requests, internal messages, a text from someone on the junior board committee asking whether the emergency vote was about Richard. Chloe read one line, then another, and the bravado finally cracked wide open. Mom, she whispered, no longer performing for the room. Why are they asking if Dad is stepping down? Diane took Chloe's phone and read the screen. Her face changed in a way no amount of makeup or poise could hide. Richard closed his eyes briefly, then opened them and looked at Vanessa with the exhausted precision of a man trying one last angle before the floor disappeared. What would it take? He asked quietly. To keep this from becoming permanent? Vanessa met his gaze for a long second, and when she answered, her voice was steady enough to sound final before the sentence was even done. At this point, she said, that decision is no longer mine alone. Richard Whitmore held Vanessa's gaze as if he could still negotiate his way back into a world that had already closed behind him. But the room had changed too much. The balance had shifted too far. Everyone could feel it now in the silence, in the phones still raised, in the careful distance people had started putting between themselves and the Whitmore family. Money had not disappeared from the ballroom. Power had. And the difference between the two had never looked so expensive. Vanessa stood without hurry, without gloating, without any need to press the moment harder than it was already pressing itself. Her calm had done what shouting never could. It had forced the truth to stand in the middle of the room and let everyone see it from every angle. Richard's phone buzzed again. This time he did not check it. He already knew no message coming through that screen would help him. Diane did. She read hers in tight silence, then lifted her eyes toward her husband with something far more dangerous than panic. Recognition. She knew the calls, the alerts, the sudden legal traffic, the internal questions all meant the same thing. This was no longer an embarrassing night. It was a corporate event with consequences. Chloe looked from one parent to the other, waiting for the script she had always been handed in moments like this. Someone would smooth it over. Someone would reframe it. Someone would make the room remember who the Whitmores were. No one did. "Say something," she whispered, first to her father, then louder when he stayed silent. "Dad, tell them this is not happening." Richard finally answered, but not in the voice of a man commanding a ballroom. In the voice of a man hearing his own limits in public for the first time. "It is happening," he said. The sentence fell flat and heavy. Chloe stared at him as if those 3 words had betrayed her personally. Across the room, the financial reporter lowered her phone only long enough to confirm a fresh alert, then lifted it again. Martin Ellis received another message through hotel operations and visibly straightened. He stepped forward, not toward Richard, but toward Vanessa. "Ms. Cole," he said carefully, "the hotel would like to extend its formal apology for how this evening was handled." Several people heard that and went still all over again. Formal apology. Not private. Not discreet. Formal. That was the language institutions used when they understood the cameras were no longer a threat. They were the record. Vanessa nodded once. "Thank you," she said. Nothing more. She did not squeeze the moment for drama. She did not ask for humiliation in return. She did not need it. The Whitmores were already standing inside it. Diane drew in a breath and made one final attempt to gather what was left of the family's image. "Chloe," she said quietly, "you need to apologize." Chloe turned slowly, stunned that the order had come at all, stunned even more that it had come too late to save anything. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Vanessa, at the phones, at the faces around the room that no longer looked impressed, only watchful. "I was only trying to protect our event," she said, but the sentence collapsed as soon as it left her. It sounded weak, childish, transparent. Vanessa's eyes stayed on her. "No," she said softly. "You were protecting your assumptions." Richard shut his eyes for 1 second, because he knew that line would travel farther than any press release he could issue before morning. Then his phone rang again. He looked down. Board chair. Again. This time he answered immediately. He listened, his shoulders lowered. When he finally spoke, his voice was stripped bare. "Understood." He ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket with hands that were still steady, though everything else around him was gone. Chloe took 1 step closer. "What now?" she asked. Richard looked at her, then at Diane, then at the deal screen still glowing behind the lounge doors like a monument to a future that no longer existed. "Now," he said quietly, "we go home without the deal." Vanessa turned then, the black silk of her gown catching the chandelier light as she moved past the signing lounge without entering it. No speech, no victory lap, just one last measured glance toward the family that had tried to decide who belonged in the room. "For what it is worth," she said, pausing only long enough for every phone to catch it clearly, "I did not walk in here to embarrass your family. I came to see whether your company deserved my signature." Her eyes settled on Chloe for half a second. Tonight answered that. Then she walked toward the ballroom doors while the Whitmores remained where they were, surrounded by light, money, witnesses, and consequences, and nobody watching could mistake who had truly owned the room in the end.